Alrighty, our guest speaker's ready. So I'll get on with our program. I wasn't planning on being the guest speaker, but we had some confusion on lining up a guest speaker, and our board had always talked about each of us should have something in our back pocket that we can be a guest speaker on at the last minute. So this is a subject that I've been thinking about, talking about for quite a while, and that's just how to interview for a job. And I will qualify that I'm not an expert by any means. I don't have any formal training on interviewing for a job, and I'll go over my experience in a little bit. I started thinking about why do we need to interview for a job, and mainly it's just because of the competitive process. All of my experience is with public agencies. And when there are job openings for a city or a county or any public agency, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. I know that in our department we had a clerical position open, and there were over 300 applicants. So, how do you choose the best person for your company out of 300 applications? Or I understand fire departments, they have thousands of people that apply, and they'll say they only take the first 2,000 people, and that'll get filled up in the first hour. So companies are always looking for the right fit, and it's usually, I characterize it in 4 qualifications. Really, they need to get someone who gets along with others, that they're trainable, that they have technical skills, and they have experience. And it's really usually in that order. So my experience, obviously I've interviewed for jobs before. I interviewed for this job. I go on interviews maybe every few years. I've sat on a panel. At the City of Ventura, we have what we call the people strategy. So when they have an interview panel, they always have someone from the hiring department. They might have somebody else from the city, or maybe someone from another city. They also have someone that will just evaluate people on if they will get along with others. And my city, for some reason, chose me to be a representative of the city for the people strategy. So I've sat on interview panels for jobs that I know nothing about. And I'll be honest, one of my favorite interviews I've ever been on was for a police officer. And so a lot of my notes really go back to what it was like interviewing these police officer candidates. I mean, they were so nervous. They couldn't, if you asked them what their name was, they would sit there for 10 seconds to determine what name am I going to use. I mean, it was almost uncomfortable. When you think about, these are police officers, they can't tell you a simple question or answer a simple question. So I've sat on panels like that. And also as a supervisor, I've been the final decision maker on who I am going to hire. So what I want to plan to cover today is really a little bit about filling out an application, how to prepare for an interview, and the actual interview itself. So the first part is really just the application. How do you find the application? Nearly every agency right now has it online. So if you're not computer savvy and you plan on finding a job somewhere, you better get computer savvy. Or you better find someone to be computer savvy, because that's the only application that they're really going to look for, is one that's online. Almost every agency has a government website. And if you're looking for a new job, go to that website regularly. And there's a couple of larger ones called like governmentjobs.com or usjobs.com, and they cover jobs all over the United States. So you can always look on those for where the applications are. And so when you fill it out completely. Because if they're talking about 1,000 or 500 applications and you didn't check one box, it is just now put in a separate pile. It was not complete. So seek assistance. If you haven't filled out one for quite a while, have someone help you. Maybe your kids, someone else who is a little bit more computer savvy, just help you get you through the application. And the next part is know the job description. know what you're going to be filling out a job for. If it says experience in pavement operations, when you're filling out your application and you're filling out the experience and it says needs to know how to use whatever, a paver, and you've done it, say that you've done it. You could cater your job description, your duties and what your experience is with what the job description actually says. So know what they're looking for. A lot of applications now have supplemental questionnaires. They want to know a little bit more about your experience or maybe about how much training you've had. No, fill that out completely as well. There's a person in this room who I encouraged him to apply for a parks job because I thought he would have been great with it. And he didn't get an interview. And I went to the manager and said, how come you didn't interview this guy? And he said, well, he didn't put down that he had experience with any parks maintenance. I said, really? Okay. So I went to the guy. I said, well, have you ever, because I think one of the questions was experience with preparing ball fields. And I asked him, well, how long have you been playing this particular sport? He said, oh, since I was 5. You know, the guy's like 20-something now. He says, well, didn't you ever prepare the soccer field or, when you were younger? He goes, oh, yeah, I've done it for the last 10 years. Well, you should have put it on there. Because that's what there does. That one little thing kept him from not getting an interview. So filling out those supplemental questionnaires is important. Grammar and spelling, not really critical. Some people are a lot more picky than I am. But have someone look it over. It's not, like I said, it's not critical, but it does show the difference with someone who has an eye for detail and someone who cares. That's what they're going to look at. And if there's a bunch of misspellings, but you're a great operator, they may overlook it. But if you got 45 other applications, everybody else spelled something right, maybe yours just happened to get lost. We talk about references. Use references that apply, that can actually help you get that job. Sometimes references are good character references. I've used my minister on every one of my references. Now, he's never worked with me, but he knows me. He's known me for 15 years. And, kind of shows that, you're an upstanding person. You're using your minister as a reference. Things like resumes and letters of recommendation. I know they don't require them, but they're not a bad thing to include there. Get a letter of recommendation from somebody that you've worked with closely. References here. This is the MSA. That's one of the things that we talk about. We've been working with vendors and other agency people for, some of these guys have been working with each other for decades. Use them as a reference. I haven't used Bob yet, but I may at some point in time.
Many have.
Yeah. Have they gotten jobs?
No, use me.
Oh. But those are the kind of, that's the reason why we have this organization, so we can build those ties with each other. And we should rely on each other for those kinds of things. So that's a little bit about the application. Now when you're preparing for the interview, once again, know the job description. Know what you're interviewing for. I know when you're looking for a job, you're going to be looking for you're looking at a lot of applications. But when they call you for an interview, go over that job description again. Know what it says. Know what they're looking for. Research the organization. Pretty much everybody has a website. So do your homework. Ask around. Ask those of us here in the MSA. Look online. When I was on the police officer interview panel, a lot of the candidates, they did their homework and they knew who the police chief was. They knew the size of the city. They knew the crime rate. They knew the priorities of the police chief. And that really helped. I was on a phone interview once for a city of Seattle. And what I did was I looked up online who the department heads were in the Public Works Department. So I actually printed out the photos and their organizational chart. So I was in my bedroom, and luckily for me, 3 of the 4 people I actually had photos of. So when I was interviewing, I was like looking at their face, and I kind of just pictured what it was like, and it really made me more comfortable going through the interview. So do a little bit of homework. Practice with a partner, your spouse, brother, sister, mother, father, friend, whoever. Practice going through the interview, because of the interview you want to be as comfortable as possible. I sat on an interview panel for water department, and the candidates were all in-house candidates. They'd all done the job, but they were all nervous as heck. This is for a promotional job that they were doing. It looked like, I don't even know what they thought. And all three of them were just very, very nervous. And they knew everybody on the panel. And I think they just didn't practice. A few years ago, one of my former managers had developed a document that he called the 80 most common questions asked in an interview. It's now grown to about 87. But I have a copy, and I'll be glad to email it to anybody who wants it. And when I interview for a job, I go through every question. And I go through it like I am interviewing for that job. And what it does, it just helps you be more comfortable when you answer the question. Because they're going to ask some questions that you should already know the answer to, like review your background and experiences as it relates to this job. And nothing worse for a panelist when you ask that question and you're asking about their life and they can't answer the question. You should know the answer to that. You should know how you want to formulate the answer, or tell me about yourself. You should already be thinking, what do I want to tell them about themselves? Do I need to tell them that I have a band, that we're going to have a documentary out in 2 weeks? That doesn't matter. But maybe it does. They'll ask questions like, what do you think of your current supervisor? Those are real questions that they will ask. And if you don't have some form of an answer, it's just going to delay the process. And maybe you may not score as high as you would like to. So when I prepare for an interview myself, I go through all 80 questions. It may take me an hour. It may take me a couple hours, a couple days to go through it. But I go through every one, and I think about what answer I'm going to be giving them. So I can email a copy of this to anybody who wants that. So we'll move on to the interview itself. On the day of the interview, I always say, be early. If you're on time, you are late. So be early. Leave your home early. If it normally takes you 20 minutes to get to that place because you know where it's at, maybe leave 30 minutes early. There's nothing worse than being late for an interview. And I would suggest even go to the place where they're having the interview, maybe a few days earlier, maybe a week earlier, and see what it's like. See where you're supposed to park. If you're going to Santa Barbara, and you think you're just going to Santa Barbara and it takes you 30 minutes to drive to Santa Barbara, and you left 30 minutes before your interview, you are not going to be on time. So you got to find a place to park. You got to find the building. You got to find the room. So know where you're supposed to go. If you're getting interviewed for a job at the city of Ventura, and you know where my office is at, I always go to San Juan, and you show up, and I tell you, the interview's at City Hall. And you've never been to City Hall, and you didn't know you had that little Y turn, and you got to go up in the parking lot, and you don't know which one of you. Now you just made yourself late because you didn't know. So if that job is that important, you might take some time just to drive out there to see how it works. And put in time for traffic too. There's nothing wrong with being early for an interview. We talk about dressing. How do you dress? You dress to impress, but you dress appropriately. For a maintenance job, a coat and tie probably is not necessary, but an ironed button shirt is impressive. It just kind of shows that you care a little bit. If you're interviewing for a supervisor or higher, a coat and tie probably would be appropriate. Clothes don't make the person, but again, it just shows your effort. The other thing is relax. You're just talking to people. Those people over there, they interviewed for a job too. So they're just regular people. That's what I found interesting about the police officer job was the two other people on the panel were police sergeants. So in between candidates, we're joking, we're laughing. These guys, I've never sat with two police sergeants before that I want to talk about, but But I've never sat with, they were just had regular jokes, and they were talking about these other guys, and they had nicknames for everybody that came in. It was really funny. But the candidates, the question that we had, it was a scenario. It was like, what would you do in this situation? And over half of the candidates, this is not an exaggeration, sat silent for probably between 20 and 30 seconds. And they even told them the scenario and told them there's no right or wrong answer. We just want to know how you would react in the situation. And they sat there in silence for 20 or 30 seconds trying to figure it out. I thought, wow, I didn't think it was that tough of a question. I could ask you the question right now, and I'm sure everybody would blurt out an answer. So you really want to relax. And then you want to answer the questions confidently and succinctly, and that's where the practice comes in. You want to know what you want to say. You don't need to be too wordy, but you just want to be confident. If you know the answer, tell them you know the answer. And then during the interview, you want to understand the process. Most public agencies, there's going to be a few levels. You can have that first level, which is a panel. And really, they're there just to rate you. They're going to ask standard questions. They're asking every candidate the same questions. I don't know if anybody here has ever applied for a County of Ventura job, but they don't even call that interview an interview. They call it a test. And everybody on the panel has to ask the exact same questions in the exact same order. And we have to rate them. And so you get rated. And once you get rated, then they're giving you a score. And sometimes you don't get to the next level unless you meet, you're like one of the top 5 candidates or whatever. So you need to score high there to get to the next level. That is part of the process. So that's the first level. You got to get through that. I remember when I worked back at the county, one of my former managers was recruiting me. And so I worked with him. I thought I was a shoo-in for the job. He goes, hey, you need to make sure you pass that first level. Because I can get you in after that. But if you don't pass the panel, I can't help you. And I interviewed for a job there recently, which I thought I would do pretty good. And I came in 4th, and they were only looking for the top 3. Now, I have no idea if I was 1 point behind the third guy or 30 points behind the third guy. But I didn't make the top 3, so I didn't get a second interview, which I think would be more of my strength. Because in the second level, that's where you're going to meet the manager or the person who is making the decision. It's a little less formal, more conversational. They're going to really deep into what you do know and what you're all about. And the story about when I got this job, I've said this story before, I had 0 construction experience when I got this job. And my guys could attest to that. But when I applied for the job, I answered the question. I obviously must have done pretty well in the first interview, but the manager was looking for a certain type of person. She wanted this, this, and this, and this. So when they're talking to the panel afterwards and asking, well, did you find the person that has this experience? They had told me later, they said, no, but you need to talk to this guy. And she said, why? Does he do this, this, this? And they said, no, but you need to talk to him. You need to give him a second interview. So in the second interview, obviously, I was able to impress her, and they hired me. But I really still had to pass that first level. So that's where my practice did come in. When I was interviewing for that job in Seattle, it was about 2 weeks before I interviewed for this job. So I was already in practice. So really, that's the opportunity. You need to sell yourself. Now, after that part, they always ask you, do you have any questions? One of the questions I'd ask them is, what are they looking for? What do they want? Sometimes all they're looking for is someone who shows up on time and get along with others. They could train you in everything else. Ask them how many others are being interviewed. They usually can tell you that. Find out if you can if there's any in-house candidates. That's tough competition. Ask them what the process is. Ask them what are the next levels. Ask them how long before I should expect to hear something. That's the thing where patience. I mean, it could. Managers are very busy. It could be another month or 2 before you hear anything. So don't quit your regular job just because you got a first interview. Do not ask questions regarding salary or benefits until you're offered a job. Yeah, they don't want to deal with that. I know personally, if I was interviewing someone that was there just for the money, that probably wouldn't be one of my top candidates. I want someone who's going to work for us. So in closing, my philosophy is if you're looking to leave, interview for as many jobs as you can. It may not be the job that you particularly need, but it is preparing you for that one job you really want. There's nothing wrong with just interviewing for jobs. You just get more comfortable during the process. And if you don't get that job, don't get discouraged. It may not have been meant to be. You go back to the first point, it was an invaluable experience. So that's all I really have. If you want a copy of the 80 Most Questions, I'll be glad to email it to you. And if there's any questions, Bob?
Not a question, but a comment. When you're filling out an application, one thing you want to always not do is lie. If you're going about your background, you can embellish. If you've done something, you can make it look really good. But don't lie about it. Don't put down something that they're looking for. You want to say you've done it, but you've never done it. You'll probably get caught. But worse than that, if you're going for a government agency and they ask you if you had any convictions or anything like that, do not lie. Even if the police or the court told you that it'll be dismissed and not shown on your record, it shows on your record. There's no such thing as dismissed. It's on there for your life. So don't lie, because if you're on there, it doesn't blackball you. But if you say you're not any convictions and it's on there, that blackballs you. So be careful about when you fill it out. Don't lie.
And also, if you're a veteran, I'm not sure what the number is, a D something form. D14? 214. Have it. Because they do give, most agencies, I think almost everyone gives a veterans preferential treatment. You will get an interview. So those are things, seek help.
You're in the Navy.
But seek help, seek assistance. I have no problem helping anybody fill application, even my own guys. Practice interviewing, whatever it takes. I'm all about people advancing and promoting. So, but thank you very much, and appreciate your time.